Hey, everybody. So I want to go full disclosure on this and say that I had already recorded episode 8. It was in the can. But though I mentioned in episode 7 about, peppering joy in your daily life, I feel very strongly that episode 8 was a need to discuss a heavy enough topic that I unfortunately got a little bit too inebriated, got way too drunk. I was slurring my words. I was very repetitious. But it was because it's a tough enough topic for me that I didn't feel like I could discuss it without a little bit over a gallon. Okay, I'm just throwing a number out there for no goddamn reason. But too much alcohol before I hit record. So I made sure to hit record much earlier this time. But the theme of episode 8 that I was trying to go for was count your blessings. But no matter how I approached it, even with taking notes, I knew I was just beating around the bush. That the importance of the phrase count your blessings to me was inspired by my grandmother and her passing. Now, I know I mentioned earlier that I had 3 grandparents pass between March and April of 2020. But to be honest with you, the first one I had never met. And I'm still not sure how to feel about it. That was actually my biological grandfather. So to give you a little bit of backstory, I was adopted by the father that I've known the majority of my life through the developmental years. He adopted me when I was still in diapers. And that's how life was. I don't remember being told that I was adopted. Don't remember that. But I do remember a few reminders of it along the years. And so to give you a little bit of that insight, I did eventually meet my biological father. I think after I was already a father myself. Nope, not quite. I was either 20 or 21. That was the first time I met him. No, it couldn't have been. I think maybe my wife was pregnant at the time. Wow, what a great time to forget the chronological order of events on this one. Jesus Christ. Either way, to spin it to where my mind is at, and when I say spin it, I don't mean like our political spin, but get back to the point, man. Get back to the fucking point, man. Before I had met my biological father, I had actually met his mother. I was in college. I'm trying to think. I must have been a sophomore in college, so I was 20. And got a Facebook message at random from a name I did not know. And usually those types of messages I just flat out ignore. But for some reason I responded to this message, and to spare you the boring details of what we said back and forth and how long it took and blah, 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 it was my biological grandmother. Now, she was one of the three that passed away in March, actually. And she passed away just a few days after my oldest son, Odin's birthday. So, in our fireproof safe, we have Odin's birthday card from great-grandma Debbie, because it was the last bit of correspondence we had with her. Oh, my eyes are getting misty just talking about this, and we haven't even gotten into the nuts and bolts of where I'm going with it. Oh, I'm a little verklempt. But, yeah, I don't exactly know, what the motivation was for her reaching out or for me responding, but I got a good 10 years of a solid relationship with my grandmother, Debbie. And no matter how bad things would get on my end, because I was very honest with her, I didn't have skeletons in my closet when it came to my grandma Debbie. But she is the one that no matter how bad things would get, because she told me some of her stories from back in the day. And this is a woman who took her fucking lumps, and no matter what happened, she kept her head held high. Just to give a little taste of this, I'm taller than this woman was. From my memory, she was 4'11" by the time she passed. But despite her short stature, she looked at going out into public to go to the pharmacy, to go grocery shopping. And towards the end of her life, she was in so much pain, those are the only things she did outside of the house. She only did what she absolutely had to in order to survive. And she refused all help. I mean, Christ, if we went over there to have dinner and offered to do the dishes for her, despite the fact that she required a cane or a walker, depending on how bad the pain was that particular day, if we, as in my wife or I, offered to do the dishes, we might as well have said that her mother was a dirty whore burning in hell. This woman's body was failing her. Her body was broken from years and years, decades upon decades of busting her fucking ass and earning every goddamn penny and thing she ever had. Breathe. No COVID. But even if she hosted us for dinner and we offered to do those dishes, she could have smacked us if she had the reach. Because the day she couldn't do the dishes, do her own laundry, wipe her own ass, was the day she was going to see the good Lord. I always called her a battle axe, and it's like talking to a baby. Imagine the tone you would use to say, "Oh, baby, oh, such a cute baby." But calling this old woman a battle axe. I said it with the utmost respect and love, because this was a battle axe of a woman who didn't take no shit. And as she said many a times, she believed in being nice, but it was absolutely necessary to keep a little bitch in your pocket and to pull that little bitch out whenever necessary in public. And so, man, My wife's the only one I really talked about with how important that relationship was to me, because my grandma Debbie wasn't a wealthy person. You know, she had a home, but it was very humble, modest. But she could hold her head up high because she earned that fucking home. And that's the important part there. So this is a woman who worked hard her whole life, has been through hell and back a few times. And so I very much value that relationship. She wouldn't beat around the bush. She wouldn't sugarcoat shit. She would tell you exactly how it was. Now, I've heard of people saying, I just say it how it is. But if you're not a logical, grounded, and morally centered person, just saying it how it is comes down to a matter of your perspective. And if you're a moron saying, I just say how it is, not interested. This is one of the very few people in my life that I was able to hear, I just say it how it is, and I would agree 100%. We had differing opinions. Absolutely. Politically, religiously, all across the board, there were things that we would disagree about or over. But god damn. I got 10 good years with her, and I really wish it had been more, but it was her time to go. I think she had a choice in the matter. And I'm not saying like physically. I'm not saying she took her own life. I'm just saying this woman was ready to pack it up and go see her God. And I was too caught up in the busy shit that didn't necessarily... It mattered, but it didn't carry as much weight as I gave it at the time. But this is a long-ass, half-assed, sad introduction to my grandma Debbie's inspiration for this episode of Count Your Blessings. You know, the fucking house could be on fire and this woman would say, we've got insurance, grab the marshmallows. Your family's still around you, all healthy. Count your blessings. And so, though it's a tough topic to really lay out before me and share it with you, I feel like it needs to be done. You know, life is hard. It's one thing to try to find joy in that life, but to act like life is all joy is to overlook the real problems of life. You know, when you're not living high on the hog, I mean, we all have our own problems, but when you're struggling to make ends meet, but through your own doing to have a happy balance in life, nobody gets rich spending time with their kids. And now that I said that, I can't wait for somebody to prove me wrong and show me, well, don't show me clips of fucking YouTube families. I don't need to see that shit. Fucking families of 5 living in $3.8 million homes because YouTube money bought that, but they don't actually have any furniture because they basically just rent that fucking house for the videos, and then toy companies sponsor them, so they send them free toys where they open it up and go, wow, look how cool this toy is. Ooh, that is such a superficial life that I cannot understand. What's more real to me was going over to my grandmother's double-wide trailer that was parked on her land. They did have a two-car garage built, but at the end of the day, that was still a trailer. She went ahead and laid it out so that it could kind of have its foundation, so it couldn't be considered a trailer anymore. It was a a manufactured home, if you will. But that was her goddamn castle. She ruled over that land. And she didn't want any help from anybody to maintain it. And so I do have, even though it was only 10 years, and they weren't during my formative years, though that can't be true. I did a lot of growing up between 20 and now. I mean, are you ever really done growing? I'd like a 95-year-old person to email me and let me know. But God, it just... I'm going to miss our conversations on the phone. We loved to talk politics. And whenever we disagreed on something, we just acknowledged that that was a disagreement between the two of us. To give you an example, and I don't want any fucking judgment, but my grandmother was a Joe Biden Democrat. And at the time, I was a Tulsi Gabbard supporter. This is early on in the primaries and the lead up to the 2020 presidential election. But at the time, Tulsi Gabbard was being smeared by the mainstream media organizations like MSNBC, CNN, and I'm sure there were plenty more. Even TYT, the Young Turks. Oh my God. I used to be a Young Turks fan, but their baseless smears on Tulsi Gabbard just really turned me off, and I haven't paid attention to the Young Turks in a long time as a result. But when my grandma was talking about how the logical solution to the Democrats' problem of not uniting and having a candidate that they could, throw into the 2020 race, she explained that it was Joe Biden, and she explained why she liked him. And then I said that I was more of a Tulsi supporter. Now, love her to death. I know for a fact at the time she was watching a little too much MSNBC, but her first reaction to hearing me say that I was a Tulsi Gabbard supporter was, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And, oh my God. These are the types of conversations that we would have. I'd go visit her, and she would always have the news on the TV in the living room, and we'd sit in the kitchen. And the thing was, she would always have the fan on in the furnace, so that plus it's her fucking house. Nobody lived with her, but she would smoke in the house. So she'd be sitting at the kitchen table, pack of Marbreads and an ashtray sitting out, and a can of Coke. There were a couple times she said to me, "I'll just have a Coke, and if anybody asks for a smile, I'll tell them fuck you." But I mean, anytime I popped over, she was already sitting at the table, watching her political commentary, Marbread in hand, half a can of not Diet Coke, regular Coke in front of her. Sometimes a Reese's peanut butter cup wrapper nearby. I mean, I remember having conversations with her about how if she were to, work on a cessation plan for smoking or cut back on the Coke or make sure to not keep Reese's in the house. And oh my goodness, to tell somebody who has taken their lumps day in and day out through life and came out the other side of hell, to tell them they should do without their their comforts. To her, it was she already had the hard times. And so with her living by herself, nobody's going to tell her she can't have her can of Coke. Nobody's going to tell her she can't have her chocolate and peanut butter. Nobody's going to take that fucking cigarette out of her hand. And so she very politely, in her own way, when I suggested these things, and I expressed my feelings about how, we love you very much and we just want to be sure that you're able, it would be, I remember saying it, it would be really awesome to have you around to see at least one of the kids get married and have kids. And she chuckled at it and she put her foot down and let me know in a wonderful diatribe that with everything that she has gone through in life, the fact that she was in her mid-60s, she put up with bullshit too long in life to live like a hamster, eating the healthy foods, getting her exercise, yada, 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 yada. She was on this world for quite a while and found the things she liked. And so she was going to fucking have the things she liked. That's just the way it was. And so going to visit her, immediately would sit down at the table with her. And before you know it, it was she'd be sliding a pack of cigarettes over to you. She'd turn around and grab a spare ashtray and slide it over across the table to you and go, "You want a Coke?" And I would lose hours. I would go into a flow state having conversations with her, just sitting at the table, smoking Mar breads, sipping on Coca-Cola. And always left, no matter how heavy, gruesome, embarrassing, humiliating, or joyful the conversations were, I always left there holding my head a little bit higher. And oh man, she constantly reminded me to count my blessings. And I mean, now, since my show notes or my episode notes were beating around the bush, it's very hard to get back on track with those things. But, man, this might not be the most entertaining episode, but it's one that I wanted to share. I felt like I needed to get off my chest because I haven't been open and honest about this. And in a way, because this was my biological side of the family, and I also had my adoptive side of the family lose a grandparent not too long after, as much as I love her too, she was surrounded by loved ones when she passed. She raised 9 boys. And then they all got married and had kids. At least one marriage and kids. There's a couple more. No judgment, just saying. You're multiplying the odds of productivity and procreation. But I felt guilty trying to talk about this shit with my family because the adopted family had lost a loved one too. And so they know what it is, but how am I going to go ahead and sit here? I haven't processed, I haven't dealt with, I haven't opened up and been honest about the loss that I experienced. How am I going to go ahead and open up to them about this grandmother? Because then that's going to just open up this little chasm between us where it's like, well, why is he not talking about this? And I realize this is just one more situation where I don't have a bunch of people around me that shared in this relationship. The closest was my wife. And I mean, yeah, my wife absolutely loved my grandma Debbie as well. And, you know, early on in relationships, you can have rocky times. And without prying, I think that my grandmother Debbie actually helped smooth out the early days of our marriage. And a lot of that was her talking to me and getting me to try to take a sidestep and gain a new perspective on a situation to focus more on the compassion side, the patience, and the understanding. And at the same time, she was trying to get more of an understanding of my wife. And I'm not saying there's a right and wrong in this. Basically, there were times where it was just two different perspectives at odds with each other, and some common ground was needed to be found. And I remember, and I hope my wife, Jessica, doesn't have a problem with me talking about this, but there was a time where I was considered to be the overbearing, too difficult of a parent, I guess. I was an overbearing curmudgeon that tried to raise my children with an iron fist. And my grandma was all for it because we're raising 3 young boys. So, yes, they need a strong hand. Whereas Jess was too soft. If she tried to put her foot down, my kids could find a way to turn her right around and give in to whatever it was they wanted. And my grandma Debbie encouraged me to try to help Jess become a more stern parent, I'll say. Until one day, I ended up at work doing a double. My grandmother had called to ask if we could swing by. She had something she wanted to give us. You know, just something perishable that we're going to pick up. I don't remember if it was a cake or whatever the hell it was. But the only way we were able to get it while my grandma Debbie was awake was if my wife took the kids over there to pick it up. And something happened there. I wish Jessica was here to explain it better, but there's the possibility that not much happened. It was just that my grandma took a step back and observed what was going on around her. My kids, of course, were acting out. They were super stoked. They were at grandma's house, so they were just kicking it to 100, pedal to the metal. Asshole kids, but young boys. But what are you going to do? And it was one of those situations where I don't know what transpired, but my grandma Debbie made a point to call me after Jess had left. Now, I was still at work, but she got on the phone just to tell me, I know you're really busy. I know you're working late tonight. Call me tomorrow when you have some time. I want to talk to you. And what she wanted to say was that I should not try to get Jess to be a harder parent. Because she saw something in Jess trying to marshal the kids into order. And she said, that woman might be the most compassionate person I've ever met. And unfortunately, I disagree with what I told you to do before. Let that woman be an angel. If there has to be a strict parent, it's got to be you. Let her be the sweetheart. And unfortunately, being an asshole may be the burden you have to bear. But don't you ever push her to be more strict of a parent. That woman has a big heart, and you let her be. And so, that conversation had a big impact on me. But I mean, it's great to sit here and reminisce about my grandma. I know I haven't told too many stories, just some of the keynote stories here. But if there's anything I really learned from my grandma Debbie, it's that I need to count my blessings count them again, and in the morning, count my blessings again. But it's also, I mean, I feel like I'm going prequel on some of the stuff I've talked about in these episodes. Because I used to be the person that would, pick up the hours and leave the kids behind, and my grandma Debbie's one of the few people that made me realize that my children were the blessings and that I needed to have a constant reminder to count my blessings. And so now with Grandma Debbie out of my life, thank you guys for tuning in so I could, share my appreciation for that relationship and some of the points that I take away from those relationships, or that relationship, excuse me. That's what I get for reading at the same time as talking. But, now that my grandmas are gone, I still have one living grandmother, and so I do keep in touch with her more often than I did the other two. You can't make up for lost time, but it's never too late to pick up the phone. And, without being able to get those nuggets of wisdom from my two grandmothers that have passed on, it's more up to me to stay in control and keep a clear mind. But now more than ever, since I don't have the past generations to fall back on, I have to look to the future generation. And man, do I need these kids more than ever, because they really are teaching me to live fully. And every day that ticks by without me being reminded is a day not worth living. So, I don't know what it is you need to be grateful for in your lives, but please take a step back, take a deep breath, and count your blessings. And thank you for putting up with me through that. Make it a good one, folks.